Hi, my name's Edwin Carrillo, and I will be going through this presentation on behalf of Team D, which consists of Saad Abu Alim and myself, Edwin Carrillo. So basically what we're looking at here is a comparative global human resources standards and practices SWOT analysis. So we're aware that at this point in the class that there are cultural differences that impact companies that operate in multiple nations, and this project here was basically designed to take a look at some of the laws, standards, guidelines, best practices, etc., to help any company really decide, okay, is it going to be country A or country B that we're going to invest resources, time, effort, navigate all the different laws and guidelines, and really understanding how the company can not only thrive but make a positive impact on the community, which would fall right in line with social responsibility. So the first thing is we will take a look at Canada and kind of go through what some of the high-level points would be for a company looking to expand their operation into Canada. So one of the first things that we found in our research is that even though Canada ranks high for employee benefits and things of that nature, they are still somewhat lacking, or at least they feel they're somewhat behind in having a real good handle on their HRM policies. So there was a survey done on close to 1,000 businesses, most of them in the wholesale retail trade, the ones that responded, and a majority responded that they were doing very little, didn't have specific professionals on the payroll that were dedicated to HR. The survey also yielded results that showed that some of the larger companies were definitely doing a little bit more, but still, left some room for improvement. So when looking at some of the active categories, active sections for HRM in Canada, some of the small businesses are already doing things like performance appraisals, employee pension is something that's already in place, and companies were holding and attempting to do new employee orientations. Now, as I said before, the smaller companies are, more likely to be working inside these functions than the larger companies, but these are some of the functions that are already going on. So really it would just be understanding that, knowing that, and building on that, and making sure that some of the things are in place for any company just entering the Canadian market. One of the interesting points that I found in the research, or that was found in the research, was the maternity leave benefit for Canada. Interestingly, maternity leave is 12 months, which I think most companies in the US are 90 days. But I think the most important thing to note here is that in Canada, maternity leave still pays out 55% of the salary, which is just amazing. To my knowledge, there's no company doing anything like that. Most of the time you get 90 days, you get to keep your job, and you don't get paid for the 90 days that you're gone. So in comparison, that would be something that would be considered to support stewardship, responsible stewardship, and it's probably something that many people would like to take advantage of. Also, getting fired in Canada, as in comparison to the U.S., for example, is a lot more difficult. Even if an employee has to go through that process, the legal process is not as difficult, not as costly, and the employee in most cases is still very much protected until everything is settled. So these are just some high-level things to consider when looking at moving into Canada. So moving on to Jordan. So the biggest thing to really understand here is that we're talking about a kingdom, versus a country. So there's going to be some different nuances there to really consider when moving into that market. However, some of those markets that could be considered underdeveloped could also yield the highest potential if for a company just stepping into the market and trying to carve out a niche. So everything essentially is run by the Ministry of Labor. So all of the laws, all whether it's dealing with labor, whether it's unions, do's and don'ts, the standards and guidelines for working conditions, who enforces it. This is all essentially done by the same organization, which would in this case is the Ministry of Labor. So for a company coming into the market, this might be a little bit difficult to navigate. They might find it less or more cumbersome than a company like Canada or maybe some of the other countries in Europe. They're also responsible for directing any initiatives necessary for providing employment opportunities, whether it's inside or outside the country, for their people. And then they also make sure that all the labor unions are registered and follow all the rules. They enforce reemployment testing, and to a large extent they are doing performance appraisals, and those are also managed centrally. So just right there we have one small piece of HR, a strong HR topic, which would be the performance appraisal. So there's one element as compared to several that Canada is doing that Jordan is not doing. So that definitely starts to form an opinion into which country might be looking better for expansion. So here's just a quick list of just to kind of compare and contrast some of the differences. So Canada is definitely a wealthier nation than Jordan, so that's obviously something to consider if for a company wanting to invest or potentially wanting to invest in a market. Canada generally has a higher standard of living. The natural resources are going to be a little bit better. It's a much larger country in terms of land mass. Even though it is a very large country, the amount of people populating the country is considered to be small. In fact, I think there's about the same amount of people in Canada as there is in California, just to put that in perspective. The currency's not doing too badly right now. It is a cold climate. It is expensive to live. It's in comparison to living in the U.S. However, on the other hand, some things are provided that are not provided. So some would argue that it's either a balance or a wash one way or another. Taxes are pretty high trade costs. So looking at that in comparison to Jordan, they do have an educated population, which is something that would work well for a company entering the market. They are, even though they are in a region that is some may consider to be unstable or a bit dangerous, volatile, They are very open to working with other companies, regardless of what part of the world that they're in. The economy is a little stagnant, is a little lower than Canada, so that's something that either could be a big opportunity, or it could also be a big hindrance as well. They are dependent on foreign aid, which is, again, something to consider, would be sort of a red flag, something to really consider when choosing one country or the other for investment. And right now, as far as the current event would go, the Syrian refugee crisis obviously would play sort of have an impact on a company deciding whether or not to move their business into Jordan. So here we just have a quick SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So just to kind of quickly go over what we're looking at here, one strength to note in Jordan is that we're dealing with an educated population. Canada is a prosperous nation, again, also with highly educated people. A couple of weaknesses: Canada is not really a favorable climate, so there really isn't a whole lot there in terms of geography or climate that would draw people in or that would create any advantages for companies. However, Jordan could, help facilitate business into many other countries close by, but again, we're dealing with a poor economy, something underdeveloped, and a country that relies a lot on assistance from other countries in their region. An opportunity for both would be, again, that there's a willingness to reach out to the global community and do what they can to bring in more business. Canada, there's a very high standard of living, and in terms of recruiting, that's something that could work very well in favor for a company expanding into the Canadian market. Some of the threats to consider: Canada is a little bit high on taxes, again, in comparison to the U.S., and so that's something that could impact decisions and make building a business in Canada a little bit more difficult. And then we've got the again, refugee crisis that could really create a lot of problems for any businesses wanting to enter Jordan currently. So just in sort of a quick conclusion, the idea again is, not only to make sure that it's a good business decision, that it's something with less friction rather than more friction. Obviously, if we're investing money, we would like a return as high as possible, but not at the sacrifice of responsible stewardship. And when looking at some of the HR laws, guidelines, etc., that are in place in both countries, Canada and Jordan, currently we would favor the Canadian environment. And just based on research and the materials reference, that is our determination. And we feel that Canada has sort of moved faster in responsible stewardship and understanding social responsibility and trying to cater their laws to really promote that and advance that philosophy forward. So I'd like to thank you for listening to the presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and have a good night. Thank you.